We're going to crack on this third section with Tuesday's Guardian, bringing us a story about a major development here at GB News.
Yes, John Cleese to host GB News show as he rails against cancel culture, and he's quoted people at GB saying that people say it's a right-wing channel, it's actually a free speech channel, which of course is true, but you wouldn't know that if you went on Twitter today. You had all sorts of reactions. This Femi was saying, I used to adore you, John Cleese. Your parody of Hitler was so good, but now you're siding with the far right Ofcom regulated channel.
Absolutely insane. I mean, there is a kind of hysteria that won't go away among certain people on Twitter, people like Femi, who have bought into this myth that GB News is this far right thing, and it just isn't true.
And they've never watched it. No. We're regulated by Ofcom. We try and be very balanced. We have all kinds of people on. I mean, Paul Sinner said it was homophobic. It's like, we have so many gay presenters. I mean, it's honestly, it's almost too many.
Gay presenters.
It's ridiculous. And people have all sorts of responses. Daniela Nadge said that who cares about John Cleese? She's never watched GB and doesn't intend to, and she felt we should all know that. And I love this response. Someone had said, such a fantastic company, that's the level you've chosen for yourself. So I responded by saying, yeah, we've got Andrew Doyle, satirical genius author, we've got David Starkey, greatest living historian, Peter Hitchens, one of our great journalists.
Josh Howie.
And Josh Howie as well.
I didn't mention Josh.
I think had to keep it credible.
For all this,
but the point is, we have a very high level, and thank you for the support.
But, you know, for all this, we've got to remember that Twitter isn't real life, and people are... There's also been a lot of people exclaiming how much they're looking forward to the show that we eventually produce. Well, I'll be producing, and John is going to be hosting, which we'll be making next year. And, you know, I find it fascinating that so many people these people are getting upset about a show that hasn't even been made yet, hasn't even been fully... You know, the headline of that Guardian article talks about how it's John Cleese railing against cancel culture. That's not what the show is. They've just sort of decided this. It's very, very odd, isn't it?
Because now it's people... Judgment goes across to association as opposed to content.
Right.
And that's the ever-expanding tribalism that we've seen over the last few years. It's which camp you put yourself in. And, of course, the purpose of GB News is to be... a sort of an open camp, or sort of, you know, let's put this campfire out, get different people coming in from different tribes to be able to talk through their positions and disagree.
You're on the left, Nick's on the right. You two couldn't be more different.
Yeah, but then the left or the far left would say that I'm right-wing because I railed against Corbyn's anti-Semitism and whatnot, and because I fight for women's rights, that makes me right-wing.
It's insane.
But that's the point of this channel is, if you have a different opinion, come on, and there are comics there. We try and book different comics for different things, and they just won't come on. It's insane.
And I tell you what, some of the reactions with like this headline in the Guardian, and you just think, you know, one of the things that John Cleese wants to talk about in the show will be the media, frankly, because of the way that the media behaves and misrepresents things for partisan purposes, and we can see it right here.
And the danger is that you've got people now who don't know how to actually have the debate because they have their tribe, they feel comfortable in it, and of course that's the danger. Is a lot of people, certainly from the left, who we're trying to get on, friends of comics who are friends of ours or whatever, people who rail against us, people who blocked us over the last year, and say, come on and just say your position. No, because they don't want to be challenged in any way, because they might have to actually think about these issues rather than just sprout the same old stuff to the echo chamber.
And also the guilt by association of simply appearing on the channel. And that's the point, like you say, it's the tribalism, very primitive tribalism. They don't engage their minds. It's the level of a sort of 5-year-old child. And what's hilarious is that as more and more mainstream figures come across to GB, they all get called far right. Eventually, the whole world's just going to be far right.
No, but for the far left, everybody is. You know, if you're not a part of the Socialist Workers' Party, you are far right.
This is another question, though, isn't it? Why is the comedy industry so captured by this weird kind of far-left, narrow-minded, I'd say it's infantile worldview? I mean, there's so many comedians now, people I used to respect, they can't think critically anymore. And they can only imagine these demons of their minds to rail against, and all the things they say about us are just simply not true.
Yeah,
what's going on there? Why comedy?
And it's saddening because there are people like... and what we saw with Jerry Sadowitz over the summer being cancelled from the Pleasance, and how comics who in their own interests didn't stand up fully against that. People like Stuart Lee, people who are heroes of mine, comedic heroes, and it's cowardice. I think it's people either fighting for their own position.
But isn't comedy supposed to be about thinking outside the box?
Of course it is.
So why are so many comedians going along with this group thing?
I heard an interesting theory that, you know, following the comedy boom in sort of the 90s, it just became a situation where there wasn't enough work to go around. It's actually quite competitive and hard to get work. So immediately, once it becomes an orthodoxy, everyone scrabbles around to prove they're the most adherent to it, because there's not enough work to go around, and they can't risk being in the out group, whereas, of course, it's better just accept you're in the out group.
I actually think it's partly laziness. I became a comic because I'm lazy. And I think you can then just go, I'm on the left, so I'm just a good human being, without having to actually think about and justify your position. So it's much easier to just go, rather than come on here or whatever, it's much easier to point at everybody else and go, they're right-wing, they're scum, keep them away, rather than actually having to read a book, which sucks. I've read like 3 books since I've joined this channel.
Yeah, and one of them was mine, right?
One of them, half of them was yours.
You read half the book. The best bit's at the end, Josh.
Oh, is that
I read the second
I just want to say here, it says here in the article, though, this from The Guardian, GB News, this is what they've finally relented, GB News has recovered to build a small but loyal audience. Thanks, guys. The best audience in the world.
Yes, I echo that.